Thanks for joining us at Finovate Spring 2018. I'm David Penn, research analyst with the Finovate Group. And joining me now is Ben Johnson. He's CTO and co-founder of Obsidian Security. We're going to talk a little bit about cybersecurity today. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
So first, let's talk about yourself and the organization that you founded.
Yeah, so we're actually really small. We're still in stealth, Obsidian Security. We're about 30 people. We're in Southern California, and myself and my co-founders came out of previous successful cyber companies. So I came out of an endpoint company called Carbon Black, which actually just IPO'd last week, so I'm pretty happy about that. And my co-founders came out of a similar company called Cylance, so we're doing it again.
Interesting, interesting. Now here at the conference, you were just part of a panel. Could you give us maybe a little bit of a few key takeaways from that conversation?
Yeah, so it was really just a fun conversation about cyber, what people are should be looking out for, where can innovation maybe help, what about the disconnect sometimes between vendors and the users of that technology. And so a lot of it came back to trying to get back to the basics. There's a lot of great new stuff, but you have to make sure it actually applies and you can actually take advantage of the new stuff. And then how do you cut through the noise? There's so many vendors.
Sure, sure. In terms of the basics, I think it's an interesting concept. For those of us who are not especially versed in cybersecurity, what are the basics as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, I think one example is really easy, and that's what's your surface area? So a lot of times if you equate cybersecurity or cyber defense to a sport, let's say soccer, you don't know in cyber necessarily the size of your goal or the size of the field. Like you really don't know how many computers, how many servers, how many employees really have access. And it actually kind of sounds depressing when you say it like that. But there's so much change, so much elasticity, right? You spin up and down Amazon accounts and instances. Contractors come in, they get access, they leave. So it's really hard just to understand like what's your surface area, what are you defending?
Very, very interesting. I was reading a little bit about your company in Business Insider. You were highlighted by them, I believe it was last year, as one of the startups to watch kind of thing. And one of the points that the woman writing the article made was the idea that in a crowded field like cybersecurity, it's tough to stand out. And they said that one of the things that helps Obsidian stand out was its interest in the field of hybrid clouds, which I thought was interesting. Could you talk a little bit about what hybrid clouds are and why they are a particularly important part of the sort of cybersecurity, or the important terrain for cybersecurity to be involved in?
Sure. Yeah, I was talking to a chief information security officer, CISO, the other day, and he said if you're just doing cloud security, that's like saying you defend my window but not my front door. Ooh. And if you only look at on-premise, within your headquarters, you only defend the door but not the windows. And I thought that was a valid point. And so really, if you step back, it's really about the modern enterprise, the modern corporate environment, which is you probably have some SaaS applications like Office 365, Gmail, Salesforce, Slack. Yeah. You probably have AWS or Azure, some of these infrastructure as a service type offerings. You probably still have some on-premise assets, databases, Active Directory, et cetera. So our view is you really have to build something that creates a uniform layer across public cloud, private cloud, on-prem, SaaS, all of that.
Wow. So in a way, it's a relatively new challenge to be solved. So in the sense of finding this new market, it was a result of, as you said, how enterprises are actually evolving.
Yeah, it's really just trying to not ignore big parts of the enterprise, right? And it's hard because it's very different defending certain cloud assets from on-premise.
Right, right. One thing that was interesting that you brought up a little while ago, talking about sort of how the company that you're with came together, was from a lot of cybersecurity professionals coming from other areas and coming from other companies. And that reminds me of a point that you had made in something I remember you, it was in an interview or something you'd written, that you said that security scars are key to innovation, and that the experiences that you and your colleagues, I imagine, had in your previous organizations has really benefited significantly to what you're able to do for Obsidian. Could you elaborate on that just a bit?
Yeah, I actually don't remember exactly what the quote was from the lunchtime keynote here, but there was something about, innovation is new ideas that actually add value and are adopted, right? And so new ideas in themselves, if no one adopts them, it doesn't matter, right? And so I think from the security scars or sort of earning your scars, if you've been there either on the offensive side and you know how you could break systems or hack into stuff, or on the defensive side, you know how hard it is to implement a new product or get a whole team trained on it or whatever, if you can sort of parlay those into lessons learned and then apply those to a new startup or a new technology that says, look, we actually are going to build something that's easy to deploy, easy to use, has good efficacy, and is hard to circumvent. That's really where it comes together. And then a lot of it is just being able to interact with the users of your technology, being able to speak their language, they trust you, you have that street cred, you get that meeting because they trust that you're going to do right by them, whereas they're so often just dealing with people that are just trying to sell them whatever they can. So a lot of it just comes back to understanding the buyer.
Sure. It's such an interesting concept. I can't help but imagine sometimes the idea of the town who needs a gunslinger. And a person who wields a gun is somebody who can be very helpful, but is also a little scary. And will this actually work? And they come riding into town, and there's that relationship building that has to take place. And I imagine to some degree it's almost a similar sort of thing. It's like, who can communicate to an average town folk, to the farmer, that I'm here to protect you and not just another guy who's going to take advantage of you kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. One I use is similar. It's the people going into space are not the same people that built the rockets. And they have different incentives and different risk and that kind of thing. So the closer you can bridge that gap between the users or the defenders and the essentially manufacturers or the weapon suppliers, it's just better for everyone.
Yeah, interesting. I wanted to touch on one more thing before we ran out of time, and that has to do with enabling technologies. We're here at Finovate Spring 2018, seeing a lot of different technologies on our first 2 days during our demonstrations. In terms of the technologies, I know that both artificial intelligence and machine learning play a significant role in the work you do. Are those sort of the key enabling technologies you believe that are going to help drive the capacity of cybersecurity to protect us forward?
Yes and no, and I'll give you a context.
Sure.
Cybersecurity is still really a people problem. So it's humans adding risk to the organization, it's humans defending the organization. ML and AI, and we like to zoom out and just call it data science and maybe not jump on the buzzwords as much.
Sure.
But data science is all about better understanding the information, right? And so if we can better arm these humans with information or reduce how much they have to sort through and look through and basically just instruct them, hey, it's better if you implement this control or you respond to this alert, then we start to change the game. Because the problem in cyber is leverage. There's not enough people, there's too many alerts, too many attackers. And so whatever it is, if it's AI, ML, data science, other technologies that really help create leverage where one human can actually defend lots and lots of employees or lots of services or servers, that's when we start to actually improve cybersecurity.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it touches on a theme that we've heard from a number of folks, in part the idea that data science is really an enabling thing for human beings, that it's us, just like any other tool that we've created over the lifespan of our civilization, just another tool that we're using to try to accomplish the things that we want to accomplish. That's really interesting to hear you put it that way.
Yeah, I think I heard one friend put it really well, is especially in cyber, like, people need to have their white noise model. They want to model the white noise because there's just so much going on. What activity is malicious versus legitimate? And so if you can start to model the legitimate activity, the sort of predictable activity, and sort of get that out of there, the signal is easier to get.
Wow, interesting, interesting. Very good stuff. Well, thank you very much for sitting down and talking with us. Had a great conversation, and I'm hoping that people will get quite a bit out of this from this discussion about cybersecurity.
Thank you, my pleasure.
All right, thank you for joining us here at Finovate Spring 2018. For the Finovate Group, I'm David Penn, and we'll see you next time.